Okay, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool watch for you from the brand Laco, which was founded in 1925 out of Germany. A little history about the brand. They are actually one of the 5 original producers of the Flieger watch. So, along with, big names like A. Lang & Son, Wempe, as well as Stowa and IWC. So really cool lineage here. This is a brand that definitely has walked with giants, if you will. But this particular watch that we're going to be looking at today is a dress watch. Specifically, it is a Bauhaus minimal dress watch. So just a little bit about dress watches as far as key features and design language that you're going to look for, kind of a commonality between different types of dress watches. You're going to look for something with more of a clean, uncluttered design, definitely leaning more towards the classic minimalist. You're going to want something, of course, more sensibly sized. Normally that retro 50s and 60s design aesthetic is definitely kind of the prominent design blueprints for dress watches today. So a little bit about the model. This is the Berlin 40, which implies, of course, 40 millimeters. I flashed the nomenclature up there in the beginning of the video with the rest of the stats. But basically, this watch is Laco's take on a classic German Bauhaus style watch. So let's go ahead and zoom out here and pick this guy up and take a closer look. I've got a couple other bands here, which I'll go ahead and at the end of the video I'll do a little strap guide basically and kind of show you how to change up the look of this watch and any other Bauhaus style watch that you might have, whether it be from Namos or Stowa or even some of the newer more cost-effective models out of let's see, who else is producing those these days? I think Siegel has a couple sub brands that actually are producing those. So there's definitely a lot of options out there. So let's go ahead and pick this up and focus on this particular option for right now. All right, so the retail price on this is 838 euro. Which comes out to about $886 without VAT, so without the VAT. So since I'm from the US and most of my viewers are from the US, I will leave it at that. You can also check out the link in the description if you want to take a look. And honestly, I think this is a really great value for what it is, and we'll definitely see why here in a minute. So as you can see, we have a 40 millimeter design, which is actually quite contemporary because dress watches kind of this era of this design, that's more classic dress watches, in the 35 millimeter 36 millimeter range. I think for a dress watch 38 is really nice, and 40 starts getting into more of the sporty side. But this particular watch, it's going to wear a little bit large because of the large dial, but on the wrist, the way it feels, it isn't going to, feel oversized or anything like that. Although it is, a little bit large for a dress watch, still very nicely proportioned, as you can see here. So the height is 8.9 millimeters, so just shy of 9 millimeter height. And really that's kind of side slab that you're seeing, in that case that's almost just kind of like a disc or a puck shape to it. Makes it look a little bit bigger. Honestly, if this was something that tapered like a normal case versus kind of having just an even slab side there, and kind of that disc profile, it would appear much thinner, but still this is really quite thin, and a lot of that does have to do with that fantastic movement. But as you can see, while we're here, we do have the signed crown, which is not a screw down crown. You don't really see that a lot in dress watches. On the back, you will see what Laco has dubbed the Laco 02, which is essentially the base movement is an ETA 2892A2, which in this price range is definitely a fantastic movement to have. And as you can see, it is really finely decorated, blued screws, you know, you can see the nice perlage back there, and then even on the rotor you have the nice Geneva striping. So really, really nice, really well done. And of course, for those of you who aren't too familiar with the 2892, essentially it is a step up from the 2824, which is a lot more commonly found in you know, pretty much any micro brand watch. They are becoming a little bit harder to find, so, or at least they were. You're starting to see a resurgence because ETA is making them more readily available. But basically, that is more of a base movement. This is definitely a higher up movement. I mean, you'll see variations on this particular movement in tons of more expensive watches in the multiple thousands, and it's definitely been the base movement for a lot of other watches to modify. I've had really great experiences with this movement, and you know, everything from a Longines to other micro brands, Mitos. You know, every time I come across this movement, honestly, I'm really never disappointed because it is just so fantastically done. Extremely thin. It's really, you know, just because something's in-house doesn't make it good, and just because something isn't in-house doesn't inherently make it bad, and that is the perfect case, you know, for this movement. All right, so as you can see, the case back is a display, and this crystal here is actually also a sapphire, so it's sapphire on both sides, which is really nice. And of course, on the front side there, it's also a flat sapphire, if you couldn't catch that before. Now, as far as the dial goes, it has printed indices, which are done and executed extremely nice. So you can see it just has the numerals and dashes there. And it's basically, it's finished in this very nice pale silver color in a very clean satin finish, which can, depending on the strap and you know, and kind of the environment that it's in, can actually seem like a couple of, it can sometimes seem a little bit more creamy and warm, and then also sometimes it can seem a little bit more cold and metallic. So really cool, versatile dial color that you know, I guess it's not as popular as, you know, a sunburst dial or slash sunray dial that you'll see, you know, that is very popularized these days. But this particular dial, it just is, I think it's so cool and just kind of understated, and it definitely brings a lot to the table, and it's just executed extremely nice. So as you can see, also at the 6 o'clock, there's a date cutout, and it even has a really nice beveled edge on it. So that's just another, you know, little indicator of quality, things that you don't necessarily pick up on if you're not really into watches, but when you are, you can really appreciate those fine little touches there. You know, it just really frames that date window really, really well without actually, you know, putting this big intrusive frame in the dial, and it just really separates it and gives it a nice point of focus without being overwhelming. So I definitely can appreciate that. So as far as the hands go, you know, you can see that they're a really nice shade of blue, and they are a heat treated blue. These aren't painted in any way. This is definitely done right, and you know, when it catches the light, you know, without any reflection, you can see it's just going to seem like a darker, you know, sometimes even black, but then just that little glimmer of light and the right reflection is really all it takes, and you can kind of see that lovely blue consistently done. You know, it's not like when hands are blued by paint, where sometimes, you know, you can see a glob or it can seem almost a little bit pearlescent. This definitely is all metal and done and executed extremely well. So the water resistance on this, which is nice to have on any watch, is 5 atmospheres or 50 meters, or 164 feet. So that's definitely nice. So you can take this and you can rain on it, and you're not gonna have to freak out that it's gonna be fogging up and breaking down on you. I mean, I wouldn't submerge it in water by any means, but it can take a good splash here and there, and it's going to be durable enough to take care of you, which is really nice. So as far as the strap goes, this has 20mm lugs, and the strap that it comes with is a really nice black calf leather. And you can see it has this really nice grain to it. It's a non-tapering strap. And it really wears extremely nice, and I feel like it really goes with that aesthetic. And this is a really good base to have the watch at. I think it's fantastic to, when it comes with not a throwaway strap. And I don't consider this a throwaway strap by any means, but I do have some other selections down here which we'll get into. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get this on wrist and take a look how this looks with the factory strap. So as you can see, pretty standard affair here. Standard little buckle there. Oh, a little tough with my gloves on to line up the keeper. Of course, I'm not doing it behind the camera, so a couple of technical difficulties. All right. So as you can see, actually, I think I can get it one spot tighter. Okay, here we go. All right. So as you can see, on the factory strap, it looks fantastic. Really, that dark black, it does, but at the same time, it does add some texture with that nice grain to it. And I think that texture is something that is really needed because it is such a sedate dial and really minimalist look. And I know up close it's probably looking pretty large on my wrist, but honestly, when you take this watch, if you look at it kind of on person versus on wrist, you get a little bit of a better idea of how this would wear in the real world. And as you can see, nice slim profile, very comfortable, even with the non-tapering, because it is only 20mm wide, it's still going to be really quite comfortable. And I do have a 7¼ inch wrist, so I'd say I have a slightly above average size wrist, and this really wears extremely well. I think for this type of watch, of course, 40mm is probably about the max you're going to want to go for a dressy watch. But really can't get tied up with the numbers, because at the end of the day, it really, there's so many other variables. One of them is the way the strap, if it's tapers or not, how much of the watch is the dial, so on and so forth. So as you can see, really nice. Really liking it on this strap. So let's go ahead and move on to the next strap. Okay, so here you can see we've decided to put it on the Fluco Record, which is in a buffalo grain leather and a beautiful dark blue tone. Of course, Fluco is a very famous brand, also made in Germany. And one of the nice things about this particular strap is that it is definitely keeping within that kind of OEM look, as far as it has a very similar texture to the original strap, but it actually does have a slight taper for just a little bit more comfort and a little bit more refinement on the wrist. So this is going to taper down to an 18mm clasp, and I gotta say, I mean, these studio lights are probably making this blue look a little bit brighter than it normally would be. But I mean, this thing just, I feel like it really brings out that, those blued hands. And what it does is it really makes the watch just pop. It has a nice little splash of color, and at the same time, it's something with, with the blue, it just dresses the watch down a lot. And I think it just looks great. So, as you can see, nice profile, great comfort there. Let's move on to the next strap. Okay, so next we have a very handsome strap from B&R Bands. So this is from their classic vintage line. It is the Croco pattern for, you know, short for crocodile, and it is in a very cool and sedate dark brown color, or bark brown as they call it. Now this one is going to have more of a taper. As you can see, it's actually going to taper down to 16 millimeters. And I know that probably sounds pretty small for most of you, but it's actually not, and it's extremely comfortable. So that's one of the nice things about having that more drastic taper. Also though, what that taper can also do is sometimes it makes the watch appear a little bit bigger, just because of the lack of, when it's tapering more, it's going to make the band look a bit skinnier, which is going to make the watch head look a little bit more bulbous. And you can kind of see that here. But, you know, I think by no means does it make it look large in a bad way, but, you know, not everyone is crazy about this more drastic taper. But as you can see, it really adds some great texture and really brings out the warm tones in the dial. So now you're seeing more of those creamy hues versus, you know, some of the cooler metallic tones that we saw previously. And of course, with that more extreme taper, definitely, you know, even more more comfortable. So really, really nice. Big fan here. I think this is kind of a really, you know, I think most of the time you'll see kind of a brown strap option, and it'll be more kind of that ox blood color. I think it's still really nice and just a little bit more versatile to have something in more of a, you know, classic brown hue, because it's just going to go with more stuff, and it's just going to be easier to pair with, you know, probably stuff that's already in your wardrobe versus some of those more unique colors on straps, you know, and the browns that are very specific tones, whether they be much brighter or, you know, more red or orange in hue. It just basically, you know, you kind of end up having to hunt down things to match with that. I think this is going to be something that's going to be really versatile and go well with kind of what you already have in your arsenal because of those more natural earthy tones. So I think this one looks great, but let's move on to the next option. Okay, next we have this really nice NATO option from Wrist Candy Watch Club, and this particular 20mm NATO is in a blue and brown motif, which I think goes really, really well. And, you know, of course, we've seen a brown strap, we've seen a blue strap. Now we can kind of see a blue and brown together. You know, this makes it even more versatile, more casual. You know, although this would still go fine with a long sleeve shirt, I think really adds a little bit more sportiness and kind of fun and youth to the watch. So, and then at the same time, you do have the balance of the brown and the blue, which is really great. And then, you know, of course, one of the nice things about this particular type of NATO from Wrist Candy Watch Club is the more refined loop keepers there. As you can see, they're not quite as chunky as your average kind of those keeper loops on regular NATO straps, which is nice, especially in cases where you're wearing it with something that's just a little bit more dressy, you know, something that's a little bit more modest in size. And then the nice thing too is, let's say if you have a really big wrist, if you wear it on a NATO, you know, with kind of the extra heft that comes visually from these keepers here and the folded back strap, it actually does add a little bit more visual weight to the watch, which can make it, you know, it helps, especially in this case, kind of distribute that size. So instead of looking like, you know, probably with the last strap with that more, you know, extreme taper, now you're going to see that this particular strap, you know, since it's not tapered, and it also adds kind of that visual weight to the outsides of the case, it actually distributes the size a little bit better, and I feel like it looks a little bit more balanced. I mean, as far as feel goes, you wouldn't notice, you know, as far as the strap giving you a little bit more balance on the wrist or anything like that, but visually, I think it just creates more of a cohesive look and just pulls everything together, goes really nicely. And you know, one of the nice things about the blue and the brown is now you can kind of bring out some of the warmer tones that are in the dial, in that pale silver, you know, bring out some of the more creamy tones, you know, kind of highlight those. And then the blue really ties into those blue hues on those nicely blued hands that have been heat treated to perfection, and it really helps those pop. So really cool combination. Let's see what's next. Okay, so we'll close here on this really nice bracelet option from WatchGecko. This is their Gekota brand solid mesh. So I know with Bauhaus watches and dress watches in general, you've seen that kind of mesh look, you know, with the chain link mesh, but I feel like this more retro solid mesh that you're gonna see here definitely gives it such a great period look. You know, it really brings out the more vintage aesthetic, and you know, I feel like I could definitely have seen this, you know, back in the 50s or 60s, you know, this style, probably be sized down, you know, to be quite honest. This probably would have been a 35, 36 millimeter case, and this bracelet would have been probably around 18 or to 16 millimeters wide, but you know, as you can see, I think it just looks absolutely fantastic. And, you know, really those straight end links, they just really go with that vintage look. And of course, the straight lugs, you know, and that's more squared off look, really just make it pair extremely nice. So very comfortable. I gotta say, WatchGecko executed this one extremely well. This is the option with the butterfly clasp. They also have kind of a diver's folding clasp option as well. You know, the butterfly clasp definitely very comfortable, really well done. Oh man, I'm just really liking this. It is just, actually, you know, let's get it off the wrist just so you can kind of see here. You know, really nice, that comfort, a little bit of that give, and it's not give due to low tolerances. It's really just that design with all those links in there. It just makes it extremely comfortable, just really wraps right around. You can see how smooth that just kind of goes over. And one of the nice things, of course, about wearing it on a bracelet is now it just makes it a little bit sportier, and you can wear it in the heat. You know, you don't have to worry about sweat, you know, ruining a really nice leather, or, you know, making a NATO a little bit uncomfortable. And one of the nice things is, you know, about this is you can still see that great display case back, versus with the NATO, of course, that would be covered up. So I think this just looks absolutely fantastic. Really terrific. I think it has a really cool look to it, and it's a way to really make this watch your own. You know, you might catch a couple of other, you know, people out there, and they might be wearing, you know, a different Bauhaus watch, you know, that may look very similar, because let's face it, you know, Laco might not have been the first watch brand to come up with this. I believe the original design, as far as something that looked very similar to this, was probably I want to say by A. Lang & Son were the first ones to really have that design, and then Stowa came out, and they had basically the Antia, which was another very similar look to this, and then, you know, after that it's basically just as popular as a Flieger watch or a diver, and there's just that common design language you're going to see. And, you know, and there's going to be different variations on it. And, you know, this is what's really cool about the Bauhaus style, is that it is definitely recognizable, but no one really owns that. I'd say if there was anybody who had great market share on this style, it probably would be Nomos, just because they're just such a breakthrough brand, you know, offering really great value as far as, you know, in-house movements and just the quality. Let me just wipe this off real quick off camera. Knock the dust off this guy and the fingerprints so we can close on a nice resting wristy there. So let's go ahead and go with my final thoughts. All right, on the wrist, this thing is extremely versatile and handsome. It just oozes quality, and it's not in your face. It's just one of those things where you pick up, you know, as you look at it, you see really how finely done the hands are. You see that date window, you know, you see the crown just perfectly done there, the case finishing, you know, just it's one of those things you appreciate it over time. It's not something you pick it up and you're like, wow, this is a great watch. you know it's a good watch when you pick it up, but you learn that it's a great watch through wearing it. And I gotta say, I've really connected with this piece. And I'm not a huge dress watch guy. If you've seen the channel, I don't have a lot of dress watches, but I think this definitely, you know, has converted me, and it's just a really great piece, and I'm extremely impressed with it. Now, as far as model variants go, you know, there's also a slightly thinner hand windable variant, you know, but of course the movement that's in there, you'll find, to me, it doesn't offer the same value proposition, because you'll find those same movements inside Hamiltons for, you know, very cheap, you know, under 300 bucks. So, but I mean, at the same time, you'll also see that same movement in watches that are very, very expensive, you know, upwards of $1,000. But, you know, in this case, I feel like the, you know, getting the automatic model with the 2892 just offered more bang per buck and more, you know, I guess more tangible value, something that was more objective and not really open to interpretation. That is a valuable movement. It's extremely capable and really renowned. So it's a great movement. So that was why I leaned more towards that. So also, you know, they have basically they offer it in either a black or brown leather. And then there are other models that are a bit similar that's kind of in this classic line, but I wouldn't really call them a model variant of this watch. They're just, you know, more cousins to this watch. So I gotta say, really big fan of this. I do believe that previously they did have some options that looked very much like this and similar dimensions, but they had lower end movements. But as far as I know, I believe those are actually discontinued, and they've kind of streamlined this model a bit to just kind of have it more of an upper halo tier watch for them. Okay, and then as far as comparable models, of course, we talked about from Nomos, you know, the Tangent 38 datum, because this does have the date. But I mean, that watch, you know, $2,700 watch. It does offer, you know, an in-house movement with manual wind, and it's extremely thin at just under 7 millimeters. It's 6.75 millimeters. That is a great piece. But, you know, one of the things that I don't like about that watch, and there's not much not to like about it, but the actual lugs, they have this kind of crink and kick in them. And I think these lugs just flow much, much nicer. And they're just, you know, to me, it just really goes with the design just a bit more. Although, you know, the uniqueness definitely is there with the Nomos, and it's a more high-end model, and it's, you know, they're also a great brand. But, you know, do I really think that it's, you know, triple the value of this watch? I don't think so. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'd say a more comparable, you know, and popular option would be the Stoa, the Entia Classic, the 39 millimeter. So those ones are actually very similar in cost. They're actually at about 857 euro, which comes out to around 905 US dollars. But that watch is going to have the 2824-2 in it. Definitely a lot more common, although it's going to be really, really well finished in the Stoa. It's just not going to have that same level as far as, you know, really the technological, I'd say, edge that the 2892 has. And I mean, the 2892, even in the base finish, essentially is already like at the elaborate finish of a 2824 as far as kind of specs and tolerances go. If that tells you a little kind of about the difference and kind of where they stack as far as, you know, when the way that ETA kind of models them within kind of their tiers. So, you know, and also that watch is slightly thicker. And of course, the prices we discussed, those are retail prices, because I did cover retail price here. I mean, because you're buying directly from Laco. I mean, there's a lot of other, you know, other vendors that will carry these pieces, and there's, you know, of course, different pricing, and there's always sales and deals. But, you know, comparing apples to apples, you know, that's one of those things where, you know, it's a really close one. And I'd say, you know, you'll see tons of people wearing that Stoa as kind of an optional, you know, just an affordable option to the Nomos. And I think this is actually a better value, and it is slightly cheaper, and it's also just a little bit more special because you just don't see them as much. So, you know, I just really, really like that, and I think this is kind of a diamond in the rough, and it's something that you don't necessarily come across very often, so not a lot of people know about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and hope that this video helps, you know, open a couple people's eyes to this piece, because I think it's definitely worth a look, worth a try. It's fantastic on the wrist, and you know, it's just a really great piece. You know, bottom line, it's clean and classic, you know, Bauhaus design, and it's in a quality package that's made in Germany. You know, the Germans are known for quality, you know, quality goods, quality handcrafted goods. You know. And also it's from a brand, you know, with a legitimate horological history. You know, they have horological chops. They're as one of the 5 original, and I believe, you know, one of the 4 original Flieger manufacturers that, you know, were German. You know, IWC Swiss, and they also produced them as well. But you know, Laco was one of the originals, and they're still around today, which I think is really, really cool. Yeah, sure, you know, new management and whatnot, and of course during the quartz crisis of the 70s, there was a brief little stint there where they were owned by Timex and kind of went downstream. But I think they're really having a return to form. You know, not on the quite the level of a Tudor, but I think kind of on the micro brand and more boutique side of the industry, I feel like they have that similar kind of I guess that just a similar quality about them, where they just are tying in the old, but they're just executing it in a way that just makes it very relevant for today. So, you know, Lacos in general are pretty rare, but they're also very respectable. You'll see them in collections, you know, where people have much more expensive watches, you know, and this model is no different. You know, it just really is a nice bang per buck, you know, quote unquote, watch. I mean, considering the combination of movement, fit and finish, and overall build quality, I think this is just a winner, and you know, I'm really happy with it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. You know, do you prefer the Stoa? Do you say, hey, just save up for a Nomos? Or do you think that what I'm presenting to you here offers kind of just another option that may even be more enticing as far as value proposition goes? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, and stay tuned for more you know, more content just like this. Thanks, guys. Bye.